100 years ago, Chevrolet sprang bolt by bolt, car by car, out of the very best America had to offer. Ingenuity, integrity, optimism, and a belief that the finest things are the most thoughtfully made, not the most expensive. Today, the American character is no less strong, and Chevrolet continues as an expression of the best of it, bringing more technology to more people than ever in our history. Inventing new ways to get around our planet while helping to preserve it at the same time. Exploring new horizons of design and power. And making our vehicles amongst the safest on Earth. This isn't just any car company. This is Chevrolet. And the strength of our character can be found in every car and truck we make. It's why today, tomorrow, and on into a bright future, we can proudly say, Chevy runs deep.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dan Ackerson. I'm Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of the General Motors Company. It's my pleasure to welcome you to our second annual meeting of stockholders of the new General Motors Company. As you entered the room this morning, you were given three documents. First, the proxy statement. Second, the order of business and conduct of meeting guidelines. And third, lastly, an explanation of forward-looking statements. I hope you'll take a few minutes to read this material. First item on today's agenda is a report on General Motors' state of business. Then we'll begin the business portion of the meeting, during which time we'll address matters set forth in the proxy statement. After that, we'll have some time for questions and comments from the audience. My brief update follows. We find ourselves at a unique time in the company's history, in our industry's history, in our nation's history. In fact, General Motors almost made history by not making any future histories. From the old GM's bankruptcy to the launch of the new GM, to the biggest IPO ever, in a span of 18 months, it's been a dizzying array of activity. It's remarkable, and I believe, as does our board, as does our management, and as does every employee of General Motors, that our future will be just as amazing in the years to come as it has been these past few years. We're in the midst of a transformation. It's in our making. You can see it, you can walk the floors of our offices or any plant, and you can feel it. No question, the last few years have been very hard for General Motors and our industry. But it's important to note that it wasn't done by one CEO, one labor contract, one bad year put us in jeopardy. It was the death of 1,000 cuts, and it was the decades in making. What was GM's management worried about 50 years ago? I often ask myself. You look at the pictures in our history, in our museum, the Heritage Museum, and you can see they were worried about how large a fins will be on the 61 Cadillac and how to squeeze 50 additional horsepower in that giant Chevy Block V8. What were they worried about? I often ask myself. International competition, unsustainable labor contracts, complexity and bureaucracy, management that choked off initiative and entrepreneurship, crushing debt, brand amalgamation, and confusion in the marketplace. History would suggest they weren't focused on any, maybe not all or any of these. Today is a much different story. We have to manage all these and more. We have complex regulatory requirements, fuel efficiency, carbon emissions. We have a volatile oil market, rising global competitors, fast evolution of technology and advanced propulsion, global partnerships in distant markets. Daunting as it may be, it's also invigorating. We love it, and we relish the challenges we face and the risk we must take. I believe we're well positioned to meet these challenges, and our team is working hard for success today, tomorrow, and for years to come. And as perverse as it may sound, the bankruptcy, as difficult as it was, may have been not only a second chance, but a rebirth of a great 21st century global manufacturing company that is no longer burdened by the past and positioned to truly compete in the 21st century. Let me assure you, no one is doing a victory lap. We have a lot to do, but we have been part of a massive turnaround as a team. A transformation, as I said, is in place. And although we have many factors in our favor, let me just take you through a couple of those and outline the reasons for our optimism going forward. First and foremost, we have a new business model. We can actually make money in North America at the top and the bottom of the business cycle. To give you an example, General Motors North America in 2010 had EBIT of $5.7 billion when the industry's sales level, the SAR, was at 11.8 million. That was unheard of under the old construct. We're creating a focus on developing a fortress balance sheet, as we refer to it. Today, we have roughly $36.5 billion of cash and available liquidity, with only $5 billion in debt at the end of the first quarter. We have a new senior management team, the right mix of GM experience and passion, and the expertise of outside perspectives. We're attracting talent from our competitors inside the automotive industry and from outside industries with different perspectives and new experiences as well. The global strength of General Motors is legendary. When you look at the BRIC countries, we have the single largest market share. We are better positioned than any other competitor in the world. GM has the leading market share in the BRIC countries, and analysts expect that in the BRIC countries between now and 2015, that volume will grow by 12 million units. That bodes well for us in the future if we remain competitive, not only on a domestic but global basis. We are now producing outstanding vehicles. Our aspirations isn't for average, it's for outstanding. It starts and ends with beautifully styled, fuel-efficient cars, trucks, and crossovers that our customers want and desire, not what we view to be the right choice. How do we do this? How do we bring these wonderful cars to market? We bring them with product discipline. Product development is much more rigorously defined today than it was several years past. We are creating more value within the car, within the vehicle, and customers are willing to pay for that differentiation. The Buick Verano, the Chevrolet Sonic Z, they're on stage here this morning with me and others. And there are other vehicles, for example, the Cruze, are out in the lobby. These are just the tip of the iceberg of what will be coming in the years ahead of us. These two vehicles we're launching this year, and the timing, quite frankly, couldn't be better. Gas today is $1.30 a gallon in this country, more than it was only a year ago. Customers are demanding, and we will deliver fuel efficiency in our vehicles. The Volt and the Cruze were introduced late last year in the November timeframe. The Volt is in a category of by itself. The Cruze just last month became the top-selling compact car in America. We introduced it on November 15th, filled the pipeline for the 6 weeks ending 2010. So we've been in the marketplace for 5 months, and in that short period of time have taken that segment leadership. I maintain these are the right vehicles at the right time in our history. The products we have, the competitive dynamic we now possess, are generating results that we can build on for the future. We've had 5 straight profitable quarters, and that's largely because we're competitive now. In the first quarter, we had income of $3.2 billion of EBIT adjusted, $3.2 billion up straight up, and $2 billion of EBIT adjusted. There were some unusual non-recurring events. Revenue in the first quarter hit $36 billion. That was up $4.7 billion from the prior year first quarter. Pretty good growth and a reasonably tame market. We're gaining market share. We're at 11.5% global market share in the first quarter of 2011. That's up nearly a half a point in 1 year. May 2011 U.S. market share was 20.5. A year ago, it was roughly 20%. What's really significant in the transition from a bankruptcy into a viable public company, our retail share in the U.S. was 17.5% at the end of May, compared to pre-Chapter 11, May 09, when it was 14.9%. Things were looking bad. And that's today, the 17.7% is with 4 brands. We were very concerned as a management team transitioning to a 4-brand strategy to make the transition and hold the loyalty of customers that were in brands that had been eliminated. It speaks volumes to our marketing prowess that I think we've developed over the last couple of years. And we're starting to see fair value for our products. And by that I mean our average transaction prices are up. The most recent ATP, average transaction price, we have is just over $29,500. That's $1,100 above the industry average. It's the highest in the industry among full-line manufacturers. So we are building great products, and we are able to price for that premium. And because we have a healthy balance sheet, because we aren't shackled by crippling cost structures, we have the freedom to reinvest in the business. In the U.S. alone, we've added 9,000 U.S. jobs since bankruptcy, and we've invested roughly $3.5 billion since mid-2009. Last month, we announced an additional $2 billion in U.S. facility investment, creating or retaining 4,000 additional jobs. According to the Center for Automotive Research, that investment will support 28,000 other jobs related to our industry and add nearly $3 billion to the U.S. GDP. It doesn't stop there. We're doing a lot of things behind the scenes to prepare for the challenges known and unknown. To use a sports metaphor, when a shortstop makes a great play, throws out a runner, it doesn't show up in the box score. It simply shows up as an out. We're doing things that you may not hear about, but we're making the play all the same. Last year, as we came off the IPO, the question was asked, what's the biggest possible unknown that could preclude us from achieving our goals? And it was, what if oil spiked to above $100 a barrel? I didn't think that was really going to happen, but we actually took it upon ourselves and developed a contingency plan from the lessons learned from 2008 when oil spiked then. And much of what you're seeing in the marketplace today, you saw the next generation Malibu that's out in the foyer, and you can see that these cars, these new, highly fuel-efficient cars, are cadenced almost perfectly through this year and early next year. As I mentioned, we had the Chevy Cruze, the Volt, come out in the fourth quarter. You have the Verano coming out in November. You have the Sonic coming out in August, and then we have in January of 12 the next generation Chevy Malibu. It will also have e-assist on it, which will give it best in segment fuel efficiency. We created an integrated risk function within the company, a chief risk officer and staff to analyze our potential vulnerabilities, everything from something as disastrous as the tsunami in Japan, supply chain interruptions, foreign currency fluctuations, our footprint and where we're exposed to certain foreign currency fluctuations, in order to proactively address these vulnerabilities before they actually materialize. We're reviewing our design, engineering, and manufacturing footprints in an effort to reduce the amount of complexity and eliminating the associated cost. And just as a fun thing we did recently, we had an exercise called Tough Love, where we took some of our senior management, we broke into, was it 10 teams or 6 teams? 6 teams. We produced volumes of information on individual companies, for example, a Volkswagen, a Ford, or a Hyundai. And we actually said, what would you do? We tasked the group, what would you do to attack and disadvantage General Motors? And it was enlightening and a little bit frightening, and it starts to show that we actually understand our company probably as well as anybody where our perceived vulnerabilities are. And of course, we'll try to address those before someone else figures it out. God forbid someone will leave that exercise and go to work for one of our competitors. So those are the kind of things that you would expect any well-managed, smart business would do. But we are pursuing even larger goals for General Motors that will position us for long-term growth. We're creating a dual brand strategy on a global basis that we've identified Cadillac as our premium global brand. We hope within the next 18 to 24 months we'll be producing Cadillacs in an international context, not for domestic utilization and for export. We've designated and have for some period of time that Chevrolet will be our global value brand. Chevrolet is a great brand. It's one of the 5 most recognized automotive brands in the world. Last year, it was the only brand in the top 5 that gained market share, in large measure because of our success in China, but nevertheless, this is a brand that represents our company well, and we're cadenced perfectly with a new lineup over the next couple of years for both Chevrolet and Cadillac. These 2 global brands will be flanked by our regional brands in places like China, Europe, and Australia. We've made great strides but have much to do in Europe. Last year, we lost $1.8 billion in Europe. 800,000 of that was associated with restructuring cost. We have continuing restructuring to do in Europe, but we're pleased with the progress we've made to date. On the roadshow with our initial public offering, we said we hoped to break even in Europe after our expenses for restructuring, and I think we're still on plan. Actually, in the first quarter, we broke even, but we had no significant restructuring charges in the first quarter. So we have made significant progress in Europe, such that it's just not an abyss that we were looking into 18 to 24 months ago. We're trying to fund our pensions. When the new GM exited from bankruptcy, we had roughly 17 to 18 billion unfunded pension liability in the U.S. alone. We've cut that by almost half since the end of 2009. And I think this is on us, regardless of the government's involvement with the company longer term, how long that might be or not be. It's imperative that this management team assume that responsibility, that we do, over time, fully fund our U.S. pension liability. So these are the kinds of things that we're working on every day to make this company better, stronger, faster, and more profitable. It really is the new GM. And we have a new attitude. Expect to win, strive to win, And that's what this company and its management is about. Our leadership team is steadfast in these goals. We're resolved to move more quickly, more decisively, and to grow our business, and to be more proactive, and to anticipate change better than maybe we did in the past, to look over the horizon and try to prepare for not only opportunity but for risk. With the people we have now, the product mix we have and will improve, I have no doubt about the success of this company in the coming years. This is your company. Thank you for being with us today. And now I'll go on to the next item of business, after which I'll be glad to take your questions and/or comments.